Alright, 2017 Bookshelf Tour Part 2, European History. Let's get started. Okay, so here you can see in the middle are my 3 European history shelves. They're divided by geography and chronology. So let's get started with the top shelf. This top shelf contains history of the British Isles, and it's divided by chronology and location. And so first we have The Druids by Peter Beresford Ellis. Next we have Who Were the Celts? Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About the Celts, 1000 BC to the Present by Kevin Duffy. Then we have On the Ruin of Britain by Gildas. Then we have An Ecclesiastical History of the English People by Bede. Then we have Geoffrey of Monmouth's The History of the Kings of Britain. A side note on this particular book, it is almost entirely fiction. Then we have The King's War, 1641 to 1647 by C.V. Woodward. Then we have The English Civil War and Revolution, a source book by Keith Lindley. Next we have The Growth of Political Stability in England from 1675 to 1725 by J.H. Plum. Next we have The Bloodless Revolution, England 1688 by Stuart Prawl. Next we have Caribbean Exchanges, Slavery and the Transformation of English Society 1640 to 1700 by Susan Dwyer Amuson. And next we have from the Ideas and Context series, The Ideological Origins of the British Empire by David Armitage. And next we have A History of Britain, Volume 2, The Wars of the British, 1603 to 1776 by Simon Schama. Next, we have 2 books by the same author. On the left, we have Captives, Britain, Empire, and the World from 1600 to 1850. And on the right, we have Britain's Forging the Nation, 1707 to 1837, both by Linda Colley. Next we have Rebels Against the Future, The Luddites and Their War on the Industrial Revolution, A Lesson for the Computer Age by Kirkpatrick Sale. Next we have The Opium Wars, The Addiction of One Empire and the Corruption of Another by W. Travis Haynes III and Frank Stanello. Then we have The Age of Empire, 1875 to 1914 by Eric Hobsbawm. Then we have 4 books by the same author, The History of the English-Speaking Peoples series by Winston S. Churchill. We then have a follow-up to Winston Churchill's series, A History of the English-Speaking Peoples Since 1900 by Andrew Roberts. Then we have Scotland, A New History by Michael Lynch, The Great Shame by Thomas Keneally, and The Oxford History of Ireland by R.F. Foster. Next we move on to the second shelf. On the left-hand side, we have French history, and on the right-hand side, we have German history. Starting on the French side, we have The Carolingian Empire, The Age of Charlemagne by Heinrich Freichnau. Then we have The French Revolution, 1787 to 1799 by Albert Sobel. And then we have The Terror, The Merciless War for Freedom in Revolutionary France by David Andres. After that we have Citizens, A Chronicle of the French Revolution by Simon Schama. And then from the American Heritage Library we have The Age of Napoleon by J. Christopher Harold, which is followed by Napoleon by Felix Markham, followed by Mission to Civilize the French Way by Mort Rosenblum. And next we have Napoleon III and the Second Empire by J.P. Bury. And then we have A Concise History of France by Roger Price. In the middle here we have a book bridging the French and German sections. Society, Government, and the Enlightenment, The Experiences of 18th Century France and Prussia by C.B.A. Behrens. We then move into the German section with Frederick the Great and the Rise of Prussia by D.B. Horn, which is followed by Indentured to Liberty, Peasant Life in the Hessian Military State by Peter K. Taylor. After that we have Bismarck in Modern Germany by W. N. Mendicott, which is followed by Otto von Bismarck's Reflections and Reminiscence, edited by Theodor S. Harmrow. Next we have The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, A History of Nazi Germany by William L. Schreier. Then we have They Thought They Were Free, The Germans, 1933 to 45 by Milton Mayer. Next we have Policy and Politics in West Germany, The Growth of a Semi-Sovereign State by Peter J. Katzenstein. And closing out the German section we have Germania, In Wayward Pursuit of the Germans and Their History by Simon Winder. And on this shelf we have the last of my European history section. On the right we have Russian history, and on the left we have assorted European histories. Starting on the right hand side we have The Great Game, Struggle for Empire in Central Asia by Peter Hopkirk, followed by A Classic History of 19th Century Russia, edited and abridged by Robert Bass, followed by East of the Sun, The Epic Conquest and Tragic History of Siberia by Benson Bobrick. Next we have Stalin's America Policy, From Entente to Détente to Cold War by William Taubman. Then we have The Great Terror, A Reassessment by Robert Conquest, followed by The New Cold War, Putin's Russia and the Threat to the West by Edward Lucas. Next is Red Notice, A True Story of High Finance, Murder, and One Man's Fight for Justice by Bill Browder. Then we have Implosion, The End of Russia and What It Means for America by Ilan Berman. And finishing out the Russia section, it's Putin's Kleptocracy, Who Owns Russia by Karen Dawisha. Next we move to the left-hand side with assorted European histories, starting with An Islamic History of Spain by W. Montgomery Watt and Pierre Cachea, which is followed by Balkan Ghosts by Robert D. Kaplan. After that we have The Artist, the Philosopher, and the Warrior by Paul Strathern. Then we have The Habsburgs, Embodying Empire by Andrew Wheatcroft. Then we have Trade and Dominion, the European Overseas Empires in the 18th Century by J.H. Parry. Then we have A World Restored, Metternich, Castlereagh, and the Problems of Peace, 1812 to 1822 by Henry Kissinger. Next we have The Congress of Vienna, A Study in Allied Unity, 1812 to 1822 by Harold Nicholson, followed by 1848, The Year of Revolution by Mike Rapport. We then have The Age of Revolution, 1789 to 1848 by E.J. Hobsbawm. Penultimately, we have The Age of Revolution and Reaction, 1789 to 1850 by Charles Breunig. And the final book of the European section would be Lenin, Stalin, and Hitler, The Age of Social Catastrophe by Robert Galately. Well, that does it for part 2. Come back on Tuesday for part 3, where we'll be covering the rest of the Americas, plus the Asia Pacific and Africa. Until then, keep reading.